It's the first episode of Locked On Grizzlies in 2025. New year, same injury report, at least for now, for Memphis. It didn't matter on New Year's Eve, though. The Grizzlies picked up a big win against the Phoenix Suns. Damichael Cole and I are going to talk about that. Plus, check out the lay of the land in the Western Conference, starting the new year, and also share our resolutions for the Memphis Grizzlies. Let's lock in.
You are Locked On Grizzlies, your daily Memphis Grizzlies podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to this episode of Locked On Grizzlies, again, the first of 2025. I hope you and yours had a safe and happy New Year's celebration. I am Joe Mullinax, joined by my co-host, Damichael Cole of the Commercial Appeal there in Memphis, Tennessee. He's the Memphis Grizzlies beat writer for that publication, getting ready to hit the road to cover the Memphis Grizzlies, heading back out to the West Coast. Make sure you're following him following all of his work, over at the Commercial Appeal, and of course here with us at Locked On Grizzlies as he hits the road covering the Memphis Grizzlies as the beat writer for the Commercial Appeal. Make sure you're liking, commenting, rating, reviewing, subscribing wherever you get your podcasts. We're proud members of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team each and every single day. Make sure you are checking out Apple, Spotify, YouTube, Amazon. Become an everydayer if you aren't already one. Also become an everydayer to the newsletter. The newsletter is back today as well. Took a break for New Year's Day, but the newsletter's back each and every time a newsletter hits. It'll be in your inbox if you go to lockedondaily.com and subscribe to the Locked On Grizzlies free daily newsletter. Damichael, Happy New Year, partner. Good to see you again as always.
Happy New Year. Happy New Year.
We enjoyed ourselves watching the Grizzlies take on the Phoenix Suns on New Year's Eve, and it was an impressive victory to say the least. I put out a Locked On Now video and talked about how no John Morant, no Santi Aldama, no Brandon Clark, no Marcus Smart, literally half the roster was on the injury report, and yet it didn't matter. The Phoenix Suns are taking on water, and we'll talk more about the standings, of course, here in a bit. That was a really bad loss, probably the worst of the season for Phoenix. But in fairness, the Memphis Grizzlies, Luke Canard and John Canard, how ironic, they were the
and who? Who was the other one?
John Canard, unfortunately. I hate to say when Canard does well because, I have a brand to uphold. But Canard and Canard did well, but we talked about stars being stars, right? Yep. And that's exactly what Desmond Bane and Jaren Jackson Jr. were. If you are an everydayer to Locked On Grizzlies like our boy Alex is, and he hit us up on X again, we told you that the Phoenix Suns weren't going to be able to defend Jaren Jackson Jr. I think the point over-under was at 24.5. That was an easy cash in the first half, baby. That was an easy cash. The Phoenix Suns can't defend Jaren Jackson Jr. They couldn't defend Desmond Bane. And even though it was literally half of the Grizzlies roster taking on the three big stars of the Phoenix Suns, the Grizzlies were able to pull out a major win.
Yeah, the Grizzlies kind of it was a matchup thing to me. Like you said, we went into this game knowing that Jaren Jackson Jr. is the walking mismatch when it comes to playing against Phoenix. They aren't physical enough. If it was one of the more physical teams in the league, would have been a little bit more concerning. Phoenix they don't give you bully vibes. That's not who they are. So Jaren was the bully. And he was the bully from the get-go. 19 points in the first quarter. I think he was 7 of 8 shooting from the field, knocked down the tray ball. He had it going. And I figured he would come out early because we saw it last season. I'm telling you, these guys, it's funny because we talk about how forgettable, last season has become and things like that. Like you try to forget it, try to wash it from your brain. But Jaren Jackson Jr. shouldn't wash it from his brain because what happened was he dominated Phoenix. And then I remember that next game he played them, first quarter, he just comes out super aggressive. And you wonder, is he going to carry that into this season? But Jaren's a smart, cerebral player. I knew he'd come out there aggressive. He came out aggressive, 19 points in the first quarter. And what happens when Jaren is playing like that, it's like football. It opens up things for everyone else. And he had 19 in the first quarter. Second, third quarters, he wasn't, as productive. In those quarters, I think he had 10 in the fourth. So you talk about the first and fourth with 29 of his points. And he had 9 points total in the other quarters combined. And in that frame, in the second and really in the third quarter is when Desmond Bane started to elevate his game. But yeah, you talked about it, Joe. Those got to be the two players right now who really do damage. But what really helped them, because there are going to be many more nights with Jaren and Dez play well, and if certain guys are out, they just won't. It'll be tougher for them to win than it was against this team with the Suns. They just have a bunch of complementary players who said, "Hey, we're going to guard these guys. We're going to play our roles." You mentioned John Conchar. They put him in the starting lineup because of his rebounding, right? Like you lose, a guy like Zach Edey out of your starting lineup. Rebounding is the number one concern. And I know some people will say, oh, there have been a couple players, Joe, maybe one of those people, may not, that have played better than John Carr and probably, felt more deserving of that starting spot, so to speak. But when you talk about a play style fit and what they've needed, because it's not just this game, it's the last game too. John Conchar against OKC. John Conchar is coming to the starting lineup, and he's been a very effective rebound. A lot of it is defensive rebounds, but there's some tap outs there as well on the offensive end. So I think that worked out for the Grizzlies well. Just they matched up decently well against this team, and just the Suns, they don't have that physicality. The Grizzlies knew it. The Grizzlies brought the phiricality to them. And Joe, this was a good test for them because they got off to the big lead. Phoenix fought back, and typically, third, fourth quarter, and you see a team fight back like they're on their home floor. You're like, oh, momentum swing. It swung in the other direction, and Memphis punched back and they closed it out.
Again, the teams that have taken the bet that the Phoenix Suns are going to implode, I think Houston's a good example of that. That bet looks pretty smart at the moment because that was a really rough loss. Devin Booker isn't going to shoot like that consistently, but it is important to point out that the Phoenix Suns are a very top-heavy team, and if those guys are struggling, they can lose to anybody. They can probably beat anybody in the NBA when all three of those guys, Durant, Beal, and Booker, are hot. But if they aren't clicking, they can lose to anybody. And that's exactly what happened on New Year's Eve. How do you feel about these two guys in particular? Canard, my guy Canard, right? And your guy and everybody else's guy, apparently Conchar, except for me. To go from the DFS stuff with Dorian Finney-Smith being part of that trade rumor, got to the goal line, and then got shut down, the Lakers swooped in. They're obviously going to continue to be part of trade conversations. Is this something where, as a Grizzlies fan, you should say, oh, these guys are doing so well for us, why should we trade them? Or should you have the more cerebral front office approach and make a sinister laugh and smile as they build their trade value? Because those two guys looked the part of important contributors, even if they're not going to be that for Memphis once the roster is healthy, if the roster is healthy. When they're playing this well, does it still make sense to say that they should be on the trading block?
Yeah, you rub your hands like Birdman here. You're saying, this is what I like to see, because now you're saying, wait, you sure you don't want John Conchar? Look at his last two games: 15 rebound game, 12 rebound game, impactful defense. You sure you don't want him? Nice plug and play guy. We lose a couple bodies, we just throw him in the starting lineup, and boom, we still rebound at a decent level. You sure you don't want Luke Canard? He hasn't played as much this season, but you see, when we give him some minutes, look what can happen. He's had an 11 assist game. He's had games where he's made a bunch of 3-pointers. You sure you don't want a guy like that? We got the tape to show it to you. So, I think it's all at the end of the day, especially more so with Luke Canard, you can sort of see the writing on the wall, not because he's not playing well or anything that he's not doing, more so just because there are younger options waiting in the wings. You got Cam Spencer. He got a little feisty yesterday.
I love that about Cam Spencer. He's got that dog in him.
He got it. But yeah, you got guys like Cam Spencer, Jalen Wells, on the wing, kind of in the wings, so to speak. I think they're fine. With especially at the cost of Luke Canard, and we're talking about the tax ramifications of Jaren Jackson Jr. just had a 38-point game. He's looking very all-NBA to me, especially with all these injuries, Joe. You keep seeing him. Luka just went down. He's not going to be able to qualify for All-NBA since he's going to miss pretty much the entire month of January. John Morant is close to not being able to qualify. As all these players start to miss a lot of games, it just makes that pathway even more clear for Jaren Jackson Jr. And all of that ties in because you're going to have to pay him. You're not trying to keep, John Conchar around at that salary when you got guys, like G.G. Jackson and Jalen Wells that you're playing, a fraction of that. So, it's a math game at the end of the day. It's not about guys, being bad players. I don't think even with Joey, I don't think he thinks that John Conchar is a bad player. Just doesn't think there's much special about him. But with Luke Canard, same thing. I don't think anyone thinks he's a bad player. He just has things that he's good at, and those are the things he should focus on doing. So yeah, I think this definitely helps, their value, and as time goes on, it definitely will too.
The issue with Canard is his ability to veto a trade, right? Like, I'm not sure he's going to want to go to Brooklyn for 6 months and get beat up on, or 4 months, I guess. And
yeah.
Excuse me. Yeah, Canard. Canard's the one that can veto the trade.
Yeah.
Conchar, not so much. So obviously, Brooklyn and Memphis have been in talks. Marcus Smart could potentially be a leader for Brooklyn, moving back up into the Northeast. Maybe a Marcus Smart, John Conchar, and that's money that Brooklyn's going to have to take on. You're going to have to pay for that in terms of draft picks. If Zach Kleiman is going to keep being the kind of guy that he is with these protections, Brooklyn may not want to do any deals in that way. So it'll be interesting to watch play out over the next several weeks as the trade deadline approaches. Hit up the Michael on X at Damichael C. Hit me up at Joe Mullinax. Let us know in the comments how you're feeling about Memphis pulling out that big win against the Phoenix Suns. Speaking of Phoenix, taking on water in a Western Conference that's as competitive as ever. We'll take a look at the lay of the land coming up next here on Locked On Grizzlies. Today's episode of Locked On Grizzlies is brought to you by Gametime. I love going to live events, whether it's sports, music, theater, or comedy. One of my favorite memories was attending a concert last year. The energy and excitement were unforgettable. Now Gametime has made it even easier to get tickets for your favorite events with their new feature, Gametime Picks. This feature filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. With Gametime Picks, you can find amazing deals and see the view from your seat before buying. The super deal is a particularly impressive option, offering great seats at unbeatable prices. Plus, the app's all-in pricing shows the total cost up front with no surprise fees at checkout. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download Gametime today. What time is it? Game time. So this is as of January 1st, 2025. The new year, obviously, games were played in the lead up to today's show, but we really wanted to lean into the idea of this is what it looks like to start the new year. Okay, so this is as of January 1st, 2025, the lay of the land in the Western Conference. At the very top, you've got the Oklahoma City Thunder, 27-5. You could argue the best team in the NBA. The Cleveland Cavaliers might have something to say about that, but it's those two right now neck and neck in terms of the best of the best in the NBA. The Memphis Grizzlies are the 2 seed, Damichael Cole, and that's a beautiful thing to see. Memphis used to being the 2 seed, right? Last year excluded. The 2 seasons prior to that, Memphis was the 2 seed out west. The Houston Rockets, Dallas Mavericks, you mentioned Luka Doncic being out for the foreseeable future. That's going to hurt them a little bit, you would imagine. Then you have the Denver Nuggets, Los Angeles Clippers. Those are the top 6 teams in the Western Conference. Quick side note, Nikola Jokic is phenomenal. The Denver Nuggets being the 5 seed, given all that they've been struggling with, is a testament. And Russell Westbrook has been doing some good things for Denver as well.
Yes.
But Jokic is just head and shoulders above everybody else.
Different.
And we saw the Clippers recently, right? We know the Clippers are a pretty good basketball team. The play-in teams at the moment, Los Angeles Lakers, Minnesota Timberwolves, San Antonio Spurs, the Golden State Warriors. All 10 of those teams in the Western Conference are 500 or better. Compare that to the Eastern Conference. That is only true of the top 7 teams. Number 8, 9, and 10 out east all have losing records. A team that has a losing record right now on the outside looking in is the Phoenix Suns. From there, that's probably it, right? The Sacramento Kings just fired their coach. Unlikely to see them kind of pop back, although they did have a surprising win in the immediate aftermath of making that firing. Then you have the Trailblazers, the Jazz, and the Pelicans. Those teams are not likely to be in the mix. So Memphis looks pretty good, But at the same time, they are closer to being in the play-in than they are to being the number one seed. So it's not like the Grizzlies are safe as a playoff team at this moment. What are your thoughts looking at the lay of the land in the Western Conference as we head into 2025?
Yeah, that pretty much sums it up for me. It's very jumbled. It's very packed. When you get past like OKC, they've clearly created some room as the number one seed, where it barring something drastic, they're probably going to be the number one seed. But the spots up for grabs are 2 through 6, and what I mean by up for grabs is those are the spots where you could see some movement. The Grizzlies right now, they don't have much margin for error in terms of, with all these injuries, which is something I talked about recently. Like, yeah, this is a tough stretch coming up, but at the same time, you're going against a Kings team that like you just said, we're not even mentioning them right now in the top 10 conversation for the most part in the West. Then after that, you go against a Golden State team that's barely, in the top 10. So I said if you win 2 out of these 3 games between the Suns and the 2 Bay Area games, without many of these players playing, that's a win for me. And now they put themselves in position to do so. You have to win one of these next 2 games. At least I think that's a very doable task for a team that's number 2 in the West right now. But yeah, they're in a good spot. And I think this is exactly where you want to be, because the thing is, it's not even the injuries right now that is impressive to me. It's the string of injuries. Like, they haven't, Josh had like 3 injuries this season already. Like, he plays and then something happens and then something else happens. Soreness here. Like, he's had a few injuries. There have been a couple other guys. Zach Edey, we talk about it. Like, man was an Iron Man in college. And then he gets to the league. He has the ankle injury, misses a month. Then he comes back, and then boom, concussion protocol. Now he's been out the last couple games. So, it's a little bit, different in terms of we haven't gotten to see this team just string together 10 straight games of that starting lineup that everyone wants to see. But all in all, I think they're in a really good spot. The competition is about to get tougher, but it's 2 ways to look at it. So you could look at it like, we might crumble because we haven't played these teams yet. Or you can say, this is our chance to create that OKC-like space from some of the other contenders.
And it's hard to really get a read for what this team is capable of because of games like against the Phoenix Suns. We went into that game just widely expecting, and I say we, I'm not speaking for you, I'm speaking for Grizzlies Nation, Grizzlies fans. How in the world can they win? The Phoenix Suns have Kevin Durant. They have Bradley Beal. They have a returning Devin Booker. It didn't matter. Memphis jumped up early, and as you mentioned earlier in the show, when the Phoenix Suns did punch back, Memphis was able to counter again and pull away. And it was because of guys that you weren't expecting. So on any given night, the Grizzlies have players that can contribute at a really high level. And you could go up against a really good team and think, oh, man, this is going to be a tough one. Outside of the types like the Oklahoma City Thunder, we saw them recently, right? Memphis, not at full strength, is not going to be able to handle OKC. Same thing with Cleveland, Boston, maybe even the Knicks, right? There's levels to this. But as good as those teams are, I think that the parity that has been created in the Western Conference in particular, do you fear the San Antonio Spurs? You shouldn't. Are they a team that you should respect? Yeah. Wembanyama's a phenomenal player. But you could go down the roster beyond OKC in the Western Conference, and even in their current state, the Grizzlies should be able to compete. That should give Grizzlies fans a lot of confidence.
Yeah, put it like this. I think we came into this season, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I think I remember us both saying that a second round of the playoffs would be a decent year, or we expected them to be in the second round of the playoffs, something like that.
If they make the second round of the playoffs, there should be no discussion of Taylor Jenkins being fired. You keep rolling, moving forward.
Joe, I'm going to take it a step further. Why can't they make the Western Conference Finals this year?
That's a great question, especially if they're healthy.
If they're healthy, based on the way the standings are playing out right now, and of course, when I say why can't they, I mean there are some obvious answers there. You got to eventually beat the Mavs 4 times. Or whatever the case may be. If you're the 2 and they end up in the 3 range, whatever, still got to see Houston a little bit more. Houston put it on the Grizzlies the one time they played. So how they respond, they'll get them a couple times here coming up. So we'll see how those matchups turn out as well. But yeah, I'm looking forward to that. But as of right now, you're the number 2 seed, and you have not been able to string a bunch of games together with the same starting lineups. I think, to me, based on what we've seen up to this point, you talk about the standings. Why can't they be that 2nd seed at the end of the season, and that'll put them in position to be, go even further, possibly even Western Conference Finals.
I think that would be gigantic for this franchise. Obviously, it would be the 2nd time they made the Western Conference Finals. When the Grizzlies are on, they look every bit the best Grizzlies team that has ever been assembled in Memphis. I do believe that they have to find a way to get healthy. To yell at a trainer or to say that players are soft, none of that's constructive, and I don't think it's necessarily true either. They just have to beat this injury bug somehow to be able to fully realize their potential, because we haven't seen that yet. Let Damichael and I know in the comments. Hit us up on X. How are you guys feeling about the current lay of the land in the Western Conference? I think that an updated expectation of Western Conference Finals, I'm not ready to do that yet for the reason that you said. They have to go through Luka Doncic and the Dallas Mavericks. If Memphis has the 2 seed and a potential Game 7 is in Memphis, sign me up. But I think holding on to that 2 seed should really be a goal of theirs.
You betting against Luka in Game 7? Woo!
In Memphis, I've been in Game 7s in Memphis. It's hard for me to bet against FedEx Forum when it's cranking and when the Grizzlies are rocking inside of it. Memphis has one of the best home records again in FedEx Forum this season. When we come back here on Locked On Grizzlies, we will finish up today's episode. Again, our first episode of 2025, some New Year's resolutions for the Memphis Grizzlies. Stick around. Today's episode of Locked On Grizzlies is brought to you by FanDuel. The NFL playoffs are almost here. You can taste it. You know whose teams are going to be there? The Green Bay Packers and the Washington Commanders. That's right, your boys from Locked On Grizzlies. We got some NFL playoff football to get excited about, but it's not too late to get in on the regular season action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now, new customers can finish the season strong with $250 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. FanDuel has so many ways to pick up a W. Which players will score a touchdown? How many points will each team score? It's so much fun betting on which players will do those things and more. Make sure you're going to FanDuel.com to do just that. Visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your chance at $250 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the National Football League. All right, Damichael, it's been fun watching this Grizzlies team this year, but that doesn't mean that everything is sunshine and rainbows. There's certainly room for improvement, and we're all making those resolutions right now, right? It's why gym memberships are cheaper. It's why if you're an everydayer at the gym, you're annoyed this time of year because for a week or two, it's going to be packed. And as it always happens, by the last week of January, people are going to let those memberships slide, and the treadmill will be open again for you, right? So resolution time. These are resolutions that we want Memphis to keep, right? Not necessarily just to look at and say, maybe I'll go work out today, and then they lose it. You want this to be sustainable. For me, if you're an everydayer to Locked On Grizzlies, this won't surprise you. It's the turnover rate, okay? Memphis turns the ball over far too much. They are 26th per cleaning the glass in the NBA in turnover percentage. Cleaning the glass filters out what they define as garbage time, so that's why I like cleaning the glass. But again, obviously, there's lots of different ways to get stats. 26th in the NBA, 16.4% is the Grizzlies' offensive turnover rate. That is the worst percentage for the Memphis Grizzlies as a team since 2008-2009. Now, they're playing a faster pace. We've talked about that a lot. The need for more data on that. Early returns suggest that when you play more possessions, you're going to turn the ball over more. That makes sense. However, it is important to point out that it is not necessarily leading to good things for players that the Grizzlies are depending on, like Jake LaRavia, who is one of the absolute worst forwards in the entire NBA in turnover percentage. Scottie Pippen Jr., the lead backup guard for the Memphis Grizzlies, is among the worst, 18th percentile in turnover percentage. Marcus Smart is struggling in this area. Desmond Bane is struggling in this area.
Yep.
Believe it or not, Ja is kind of middle of the pack. Ja Morant has not been, especially when you consider his usage, he has not been the biggest issue with this. It's been those secondary facilitators that are giving up too many possessions. So for me, it's turnover rate. I would really like to see the team clean that up. You can only do it so much because of the pace that they play at. But again, if Jake LaRavia is going to stay in the mix, Scottie Pippen Jr., Marcus Smart, these are all guys the team is counting on. They have to be better in this area.
Yeah, I think those are fair points. And one thing you pointed out with Ja Morant is he's middle of the pack. And Ja will tell you, he used to always say, look, I'm going to have turnovers just because of the style of play I have. Like, we've seen him throw off the backboard passes and all these different no looks. And when they work, he's on SportsCenter and it's a viral highlight. And sometimes they don't work. But at the end of the day, the risk comes with Ja's game. And, you know, we've obviously seen the reward many, many times. But I'm going to go in a different direction for the Grizzlies New Year's resolution here. And I'm going to say more controlled aggressiveness when it comes to perimeter defense. Joe, you know what I noticed when I was watching the Grizzlies play OKC?
What's that?
Oh, Oklahoma City, it's clear why they're the number one team in the West. They don't have a bad defender on the perimeter. Not one. I mean, they just switch everything. Your turn. Casey Wallace, you got him. Shai Gilgeous averaging close to 2.5 to 3 blocks and steal stocks per game. You got him. Jalen Williams, you got him. Alex Caruso didn't even play in that game, but I mean, the list kind of goes on. They could it's a difference. And they have the ability to just switch things and be very disruptive, and they can take you out of whatever you plan on running. The Grizzlies don't have that same fortune right now, but at the same time, they have the aggressiveness, which is why I said it needs to be controlled a little bit more. Two guys come to mind in particular when making this point: Scottie Pippen Jr., Desmond Bane. When you watch those two play defense, more so Scottie Pippen Jr., you go all the way back to Summer League. When he was playing defense in Summer League, he was playing like a guy that knew he had 10 fouls. There was a lot of fouling going on, a little hacking, reaching, and all that. But when I was watching it, I kept asking myself, how much of this is he actually going to carry over to the NBA season? You don't get as many fouls. He kind of dialed back a little bit because Summer League, NBA, but at the same time, he's still, you watch him, he's pestering guys, and it's good. And we've seen him get a lot of steals doing this, right? I'm not telling him to stop doing it, but at the same time, there are so many little ticky-tacks. And as a fan base, look, I know everyone's foul discrepancy is everyone's automatically go-to cope mechanism when you lose a game or whatever. It's always, the referees, the fouls, that's always going to be part of the game. Referees aren't perfect, just like everyone else isn't perfect. I hardly, unless it's something blatantly obvious or it's just a trend over the course of a whole game that's pretty obvious, then you'll hear me say something. But it's a couple plays here or there. It happens. So with all that being said, I want to see the Grizzlies become more, controlled with their aggressive approach on the defensive end. Desmond Bane, Scottie Pippen Jr., both averaging over 2.5 fouls per game this season. The Grizzlies, when you don't filter it out, Joe, free throws attempted per game against them, 28th in the NBA. And if Joe's a cleaning the glass guy, and I love cleaning the glass too. And so cleaning the glass filters out the garbage time. So you take the garbage time out, they're still 23rd in the NBA. So all that's to say that the Grizzlies give up a lot of free throws. And guess what? What were two teams we've talked about in the West a lot today? We talked about the Mavs. We talked about OKC. Luka gets to the line. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is going to try to get to the line. When you're playing those top-level teams, they have those savvy scorers that are going to take advantage of that aggressiveness. When Scottie Pippen Jr. is reaching in there, they're going to say, oh, well, thank you. Boom. The referee blows the whistle. You're looking at them wild. So that's definitely something that's pointed out to me. And it's funny that we're talking about this, and the one name that I haven't mentioned is the one name that people are used to hearing us talk about with these type of conversations is Jaren Jackson Jr., who's only fouling 3.2 times per game right now, Joe, which is impressive. Still leads the team, but if you were there for some of Jaren's earlier years without, that's a massive improvement. Massive improvement.
I think you hit the nail on the head earlier in the show. Jaren's almost certainly an all-NBA player this season, the way things are shaping up.
Yeah.
And he's going to earn it, right? Because guys like Luka and Ja and the 65 game discrepancy, they're rewarding guys that are on the court on a consistent basis. And I'm okay with it as an old head. I know there's plenty of folks that think it's crazy, but heaven forbid you play the game that you're paid millions of dollars to play. So I'm happy that they're doing it that way personally. Again, injuries happen. It's not Luka's fault, but durability and availability should matter. At least in my opinion, but that maybe is a topic for another episode. SGA is probably the MVP of the NBA, by the way. We talked about Jokic being so amazing. The Nuggets
Two
still
ways,
aren't.
man.
He's a phenomenal basketball player. This might be his year. It's going to be really interesting to watch how that plays out the rest of the season. Thank you for being with us on this episode of Locked On Grizzlies. Let us know what your resolutions for Memphis are in the comments, or hit us up on X at Joe Mullinax, at Damichael C. Damichael, you're leaving on a jet plane. You're spending the weekend out in Cali. I think the Grizzlies have a back-to-back. They have Sacramento and Golden State. You're going to be a part of that fun, partner. Enjoy that. That means I'll be flying solo on our Friday edition of the show as you travel.
Yeah, a lot of good things to talk about with the Grizzlies and two cool games and a lot of underlying storylines, not just with the injuries, but with the players as well. So looking forward to chronicling that and talking about it on our next show for sure when we're back together.
Sounds good, but I'll close us out for the week on Friday. We'll talk about Grizzlies Kings and all sorts of weekend preview fun. Make sure you're with us. Make sure you're liking, commenting, rating, reviewing, subscribing, wherever you get podcasts, Apple, Spotify, Amazon, YouTube. We're proud members of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team each and every single day. Become an everydayer if you're not already one in the new year. Make it your resolution to never miss an episode of Locked On Grizzlies, and also make it a resolution to subscribe to the free daily newsletter if you haven't already done so. LockedOnDaily.com. Go check out Locked On Grizzlies. Free daily Grizzlies content in your inbox. Not just Grizzly stuff, but national writings, fantasy basketball help. Make sure you're liking and subscribing to the free daily newsletter. LockedOnDaily.com is where you get it. For Damichael, I'm Joe. Happy New Year. Safe travels, partner. Have fun this weekend. We'll be following your work, and we'll catch back up soon. I'll be with you guys tomorrow on Locked On Grizzlies. Again, for Damichael, I'm Joe. Have a good one. Stay safe. Enjoy yourselves. Catch you back here next time on Locked On Grizzlies.